I don't know. I've run out of bad advice to give people. I think so much of it is hopeless that we'll never know. For example, people have been chasing ghosts since the beginning of time, since 5,000 years ago. And we really don't know that much about ghosts. You know, there are many, many theories about returning dead people and so on, but it's really hard to. Well, what would be rapping on the wall with a 12-year-old boy? Maybe it's something inside me, an energy inside me that was trying to come out. We are doing more studies now of the human being than we've ever done before. That's an important step. You've got to learn a lot more about the human being and why young men willingly go off to war, and, why we do these stupid things. This planet has so much on it that has to be explored. Billions of life forms on this planet, in every shape and form. There are plants 200 miles down in the ocean. There are all kinds of strange things in the deserts. There are things that life can adjust to anything, and has on this planet. In the oceans itself, we've got millions of life forms. And they survive by eating each other. We've got birds everywhere, and they survive either by eating all the insects and worms, or by eating each other. If you ever watch a hawk dive down on a bird, he's taking the bird home for dinner. That's the way nature has worked it out. We go out and we hit a cow in the head with a sledgehammer. They have improved methods now. That's why in science they all specialize. And it's the same with writers. Like Mark Twain would go out and write about everything. A writer today is just going to write about, unfortunately, a lot of politics. A lot of people waste their lives writing about politics. You go back and read the political writings of 10 years ago. You say, why did they bother? And none of it was true, none of it happened. You know, we were fighting the Cold War for 20 or 30 years. But when you get to be my age, it looks not hopeless, but very difficult. We have the big problem of education. How do you educate people for the world to come? Where is it all going to end? One day something will fall out of the sky, hit the earth, and burn it to a cinder.
We're all ears.
Okay, well, I'm looking at my first page here. What's at the top?
You tell me.
Some bullets. Well, the first thing is Mothman on the Florida border. I once mentioned this.
You did.
Somebody had seen it on the border of Florida and Georgia. I never really knew why. It didn't make sense. It was after 9/11, or right around 9/11. The guys on my documentary. And now I think I know because, of this whole Diebold conspiracy with the Yang out of Florida. Do you know anything about that?
You mean with the bogus voting machines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, this is another tentacle of the octopus, and I think, that the Mothman's pointing toward the octopus at each tentacle. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened there was, also we had a Diebold thing happen when I was filming in 2002. When we went to Ohio, they had a crash there of it, and a Diebold executive was killed. This light plane crashed in Jackson, Ohio, which is where we were. One of the guys that organizes the Mothman Festival has a store there.
Okay.
And we were interviewing him. And it got me thinking about Diebold way back when. And another connection to Diebold, these are just, again, little things in my life, is that I knew this woman in 81. I talked about her. She's the chair lady, the chair person, the woman from Massachusetts that remembered the chair drawing and has had a lot of strange things happen to her.
Mm-hmm.
I did a photo of her in 81 that involved a Diebold AT ATM machine. And I showed it to someone. It's going to be in the book, and they said that's just the most unusual picture they had ever seen. And it's kind of a Christian. It's got a Christian theme to it because I've always been kind of dealing with those concepts. And it was sort of prophetic, like some other things that have happened with her. But I think we're kind of linked with people, in this way. Even though the person next to you may not see the UFO, the person may see it, and you may be on kind of the same wavelength, kind of like Harriet and I are, and this woman. But the story was, and I'm just going to do it as briefly as I can. The guy was asked to change the voting machine, to scam the voting machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was murdered, right? Or someone who was investigating it was murdered. Well, I can't remember all the details. Do you remember?
No, I don't. No, I'm not sure. No.
Somebody involved with the investigation of that Diebold scam, which would point to Ohio, into really big issues here. That guy was murdered, but they made it look like a suicide.
Oh, what a surprise!
But the reason they did it at the border, and this is where the border came in, and I realized why that sighting happened there, was because they took him across the line to Georgia, because Georgia doesn't require autopsies on suicide victims.
Oh, wait a minute. The guy was doing a misdeed in Ohio. Was he in Ohio and brought down to Georgia?
No. The whole thing was happening in Florida.
I got you. Okay, so they brought him into Georgia. All right, that makes sense.
All tied in with all the drugs and everything else.
I got you. Okay.
And all that.
You got it.
And yet they take him all the way up. That's a long drive, to dump somebody. But they did, so that, there wouldn't be no autopsy and they could get away with it, putting it under the rug. But that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, is that these kind of linkages, even though they're kind of ethereal,
do have a thread.
Conceptual, perhaps.
Yep.
They can tell you things. Another little coincidence that happened was, I talked about Harriet seeing a laser be shot out of shoot down a missile over San Francisco, and that she described it a certain way to me, and then I happened to find a guy on the web, a witness testimony from the 60s, a guy who was in the military who had seen very much the same thing. Because in addition to the laser shooting the missile, there was a swirling sphere swirling around the missile. It's almost like a marker. It's almost like a cosmic laser pin. The professor swirling on something, saying, this kind of activity is again, I'm conceptualizing here, but that's the kind of thing that I kind of do in my head. Oh, well, maybe that's a little symbol. We should look at that. So I sent it to her in order for her to consider that. And it turns out that the guy is teaching a class with her son in it. She's teaching one of her son's courses at Bradley University. I just thought that was pretty amazing.
Jeez. Bradley's in what, Iowa?
And by the way, when Bradley played Pitt in the NCAA tournament, to bring in a mundane issue, I guess.
We're always open to that.
If you look at the score, it said Brad Pitt.
Oh, all right. But listen,
that ties in because he was going to produce my documentary before they broke up, before he and Jen broke up, because I happen to know somebody who's...
Brad Pitt was going to do the voiceovers and stuff?
No, he was going to... His production company...
was going to produce it.
Right, and I went down to visit the lawyer who...
Oh, dude.
Friend, but was a lawyer for Brad at that time. And when I got there, the amazing thing was, my friend had a slew of paranormal experiences in L.A., living in Hollywood. And I'll touch on them because it was so fascinating.
Do it.
He went to a Hollywood party, which we all imagine. I've never been to one, but, a real one. That's a real cool one.
Hello.
But, he was there, and in Hollywood, there's a lot of people who will traffic in the kinds of things that we're kind of talking about. The spiritual shamanism. So they got him involved in some drug, ritualized taking of a South American herb that had been, I guess, pharmaceutically amped up somehow. And I don't know what this is all about, but they were mixing organic and synthetic substances to create a visual experience unlike you had never seen. And this kind of reminds me of Michael Persinger's work, which I'm sure you probably mentioned at some point in your shows. He's the guy that sort of discovered that at a certain frequency, the brain will imagine an alien. We're kind of wired that way. When this frequency is bombarding our brains, we will start to hallucinate an alien. Okay,
so go back to the party.
And it can also be done with drugs, too.
I would think.
Discover that. I think that may have been what happened to my friend. Although it may just be, again, a totally natural thing, like Persinger is saying, well, kind of quasi-natural. But after this, he indeed started being visited by an alien being. And this is a guy that, stone cold lawyer type. I mean, I won't say that completely, but very practical person, kind of a Midwestern, not a flamboyant person in any way, shape, or form.
I got you.
And in fact, it almost destroyed his life and marriage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, he was, out the door for a short time, and because he said he was in an altered state for a month at least.
Not good.
So we're talking about weeks of hallucinations, and he had recovered and everything, and we were kind of talking about it, and I said, well, we were talking about synchronicities, because he suddenly, like so many people that do this, embark on this kind of a journey, you start getting all these synchronicities, and I said, it can happen. You can almost just feel that it's about to happen. I said, it'll probably happen now. If I go over to your bookshelf, I'll just pull off a book and we'll see what it does. Because I often research this way. I just, I have my stable of books and I'm always buying more, but I'll just go grab one and open it up and see what's there. And a lot of times, I mean, it's incredible. It works a lot.
It's called Lucky Dip. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it worked with this article in Paranoia that I'm talking about. I pulled out the book, and it was the book that got him through the entire experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was a book by Ramana Maharshi, an Indian sage who realized that there was a geomagnetic thing going on. When he was 14, he decided to leave home and go stay at the base of this mountain, and he stayed in the same spot for the rest of his life. In other words, the same idea kind of as I was exposed to as a kid. Hey, go stand in that spot and you will have a psychic experience like none you've ever had. Well, this guru did that and said, this is where I need to be. And because I've just reached enlightenment, I'm going to stay here the rest of my life. So he did. And a whole movement built around him. And now there's several books out by him. He's no longer with us. But this friend of mine had used the words in the book, and the book had been very influential for me prior. Actually, I just ordered it. It was in the mail to me. I hadn't read it yet. That's how coincidental this was.
Okay.
The book I just ordered was the book that had just gotten him through this episode a few months before, and that I just pulled off the shelf. And in it, he had changed all the words in the book to put his name in. It was basically Ramana's story from childhood on. He was telling his story about how he reached enlightenment, and my friend had put his name in there instead. It changed all the words around to fit his life, and he read that to himself over and over again until he got through this hallucinatory phase. I was just blown away by it because it worked.
Mm-hmm.
He's now, totally, his life has become what he was prior to that. He was kind of in a troublesome marriage and wasn't happy. And now he's got 2 kids and a great practice. And
worked out. Wow.
Let's see. What's next on my list? I have. Do I want to talk about the nerve membrane?
Well, I'll tell you this.
It's about 1.5 hours.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah. I mean, believe me, I just want to let you know. I mean, I know that time is precious for you, and we're burning up against now truly an hour and a half.
Well,
so
let's do 2 hours.
Huh?
Let's do 2 hours now.
You want to?
Sure.
Well, all right, let's go, bro.
Let's do the stage.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Covered that. I'm going to skip the nerve membranes for now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. Here, Puhak did a lot of research on different things. One thing he found, I'm gonna come up to the nerves here slowly. I'm gonna creep up to it by hitting some of these other ones that are easier. For instance, he found that objects hold memory. I don't know if I mentioned that one last.
All right, explain how that happens, though, please.
How he did it.
Well, no, what that means. I mean.
Well, what it means is, you start, remember to visualize the cytoplasma coursing through everything, connecting everything. And that this plasma, has an intelligence to it, can literally hold ideas. And that's how we hold ideas in our minds. I mean, we're no different. And so objects do that too. And it's a widely believed thing in the indigenous world. In fact, some shamans will project their life force into an object at death in order to continue on somehow. I don't know how exactly it works, but they do that. But it's kind of it's used by people doing criminal investigations. Psychics will use it. It's how DeLuise realized that the Manson family, realized that Charles Watson was the killer, not Charles Manson, prior to them ever being found.
Okay.
Right after the murders, he went to the house and was able to read, pick up from the house and from objects, who it was. Puhark did that kind of research. And Puhark's important because he, I think, is the guy who was monitoring, perhaps, or someone who used his, he was not that bad of a guy. I think someone close to him, Puhark, could have used some of the black box technology that he had to use on UFO contactees in the Mothman area. So that's why he's important. And he has these ties to New York, Austining, which is in that valley near where the Rockefellers live, the Hudson Valley there.
Oh, yeah.
Close to Iron Mountain, which is
Hudson, New York.
Corporation that was working with Union Carbide to store uranium there.
All right, hold on. Let me ask you something right there. I mean, if you don't mind, because, you hit on a really, big bang. And that is one. The report from Iron Mountain, are you familiar with?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, people argue whether it was true or not. I think it was true without a doubt. The fact that the government freaked out when it came out, and that Johnson's administration went, oh, no, this isn't true. It's like, yeah, okay, it really is. Now, let me say this. That facility was supposedly in Hudson, New York, which is on the East Bank, across the Rip Van Winkle Bridge from Catskill. Now, having said that, what do you know about what might have taken place, or are you just talking about some document that bears the name Iron Mountain? Or are we talking about a facility that supposedly, like I said, is there on the east bank of the Hudson to keep the elites from getting nuked?
Well, I looked at the map and I thought it was on the west side, but I don't think that matters.
East side, believe me. Take my word for it.
It's on the east side. Okay. Well, yeah. There's an Iron Mountain, right? And according to my research of one of my, I've seen references to Union Carbide being the entity that started the whole plant, that started it. In other words, by the 60s, it had already been around. I don't know how long, 20, 30 years, and they were storing uranium for Union Carbide because Carbide was developing the bomb. And Iron Mountain was a physical place where they did it, and then they ended up switching, and now they do data mining. But in that transition period, they were putting out technical reports, and I think the report from Iron Mountain is one of those.
All right. Now you're saying that they actually did testing wherever Iron Mountain should be. Is that correct?
No, storage.
Storage.
So it was physical storage for either uranium or uranium-linked documents. I'm not sure which.
All right, but I mean, when you're talking uranium-linked documents, you're talking about paper documents. It's got nothing to do with anything radioactive.
I don't know. Yeah, that's all I know.
Okay.
Storing things for Union Carbide that had to do with uranium development and making the bomb.
Okay. I'm not, drawing down on you. The only thing is that, of course, as you well know, there's a big difference between documentation and the real deal. So,
well, I don't think it matters it doesn't matter to me whether or not it was real or not, uranium or not. But the fact is that they were corporately partnering with Union Carbide.
Okay.
Helping Carbide with its bomb process.
Okay.
They were making the Carbide was making the spinners that create the isotopes.
Okay.
That they need.
Okay.
So I'm just saying that it's all very suspicious that they're all there in very close proximity. Puhark, Iron Mountain, the Rockefellers. The Hudson Valley sightings, UFOs that Whitley Strieber, that burst on the scene back in the late 80s. That was all in that area.
Well, I'll tell you this, I'm sorry this is a digression, but we get a listener, and this may be completely disassociated from what happened in those days, but a listener from North Bergen, I know exactly where he is, which is on the Jersey side of the Hudson River, has also said he has seen sightings. And I mean, that doesn't mean anything in the whole cake of it, but certainly, yeah. I mean, I had no problem believing that. I'm being myself a frequent visitor, shall I say, to my grandparents' home for over 2 decades, up in the Hudson Valley, very much ensconced up there. And Andrew, all I'm going to say is that, yeah, what you've said about Iron Mountain, I tell you what, that is very, very provocative. So, excuse me, but go ahead on.
Okay. Well, one little thing I forgot about that I wanted to kind of link to the animal sacrificing thing was there's also this idea that in the occult, and I got this from Macer's story, Eugenius Macer's story, that it takes 2 6 to 8 year olds, children, involved in a shrine or a ritual to invoke certain entities.
Wherever 3 or more gathered.
And of course, is that we had me and Tommy, building a shrine to the Mothman at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that and again, my question is, was this being manipulated? Was he being manipulated by his father somehow into these occultic ideas? I don't know. But getting back to Buharik, he did this flashing light. You talked about you seeing a flashing light, and that's a very common trigger for UFO contactees or abductees. They'll see a flashing light, and then all manner of hallucinations can occur after that. And again, they can be partly physical. An entity can appear, and it can be physical for a time, and it may do damage. It's pretty clear that happens. When a Bigfoot, if a Bigfoots are interdimensional, it can manifest, and it can leave, tracks. But then it goes away. Well, Puhark did flashing light experiments where he, found the frequencies that trigger certain kinds of hallucinations. And he used them on a psychic who was a friend of the Manson psychic, Peter Urkos, famous psychic, and he found that at a certain frequency things would happen, and it launched the hemisync visual technology thing that we have today, with people put on the headset, and they have different programs that can change your brain pattern in supposedly positive ways. And Puhark was the originator. He did exhibitions for the Navy of this kind of stuff. Herkos was the guinea pig in some of these exhibitions for the Navy. The Navy had links to Meyer Lansky and the mobsters in Kentucky. That we know. So there's all sorts of connections. Puhark knew Werner von Braun, as we mentioned. And Werner von Braun knew Tom Slick, who was the Bigfoot investigator. And Tom Slick knew Puhark. And they did experiments with Herkos on using him as a courier and things like that. Just kind of things where they were obviously up to some kind of spy activity, and they had certain needs where they could use a psychic, where a psychic would work better for their needs. This kind of thing that is mentioned in Puhark's book. But at a certain frequency, Herkos would see a swirling pattern that when I read it, it reminded me of a pattern that I see occasionally. And the best I can describe it is you're kind of asleep or half asleep, and you've got your eyes closed, and you see this slowly swirling image with millions of little sparkling jewels almost, and it's slowly turning. I don't know.
1,000 points of light?
What's that?
1,000 points of light, the old...
Yeah, well, it just looks like I'm looking at the underlying matrix. And it only lasts for a short time, but I've had that happen a few times. So I think there's a natural way to enter into these processes, but Puhark went to the trouble of setting up an elaborate test to figure out exactly how to start to trigger these. So, I guess, the point is you can see where, this could be used by other people. I think he was a pretty decent guy, but, in fact, CIA burnt down his house in Ossining. He got into a feud with them about some of their things, some of their behaviors, I guess. They were classifying all of his research, and he wasn't able to really, do much with it. It would just, he would start, and he was kind of getting jerked around. And so I'm not trying to pin all of the stuff on Puhark. I'm just saying that he was, a brilliant guy who did a lot of this really groundbreaking research. Some of his research, speaking of Iceland, we were talking about Iceland before, and the Thule Ultima, the Nazi heaven.
Right.
Puhark held a worldwide conference in the 70s that focused on really this kind of stuff, and it was in Iceland, and they published a book called the Icelandic Papers. And if you want to get a glimpse of really hard to understand physics involving the mind, go check that out. Another thing that he was doing was, let me mark that one out, was he discovered that dehydration increases conductivity of electricity in the human body, and that negative ions increase ESP in a thunderstorm. So he literally started bombarding psychics with negative ions to see the perfect blend that would, increase their psychic abilities. He also amplified telepathy electrochemically, putting people in a box, a Faraday cage, wiring the cage with a charge, different kinds of charges, different, hertz charges, all kinds of different experiments on which ones would allow the person to telepath the furthest, say, and then using drugs as well to, I think I may have mentioned before that I think this is where the Montauk chair things sort of came from. that someone in the agency probably took Puhark's research and started monkeying around on people, at a facility on Long Island. I often wonder if it's Brookhaven, not Montauk, because Brookhaven comes up in Puhark's books as being a place where he might meet, say, Von Braun or somebody and talk about some particular experiment. And they were funding some of his work.
Well, I mean, again, is it a coincidence or, are we looking at really the real deal? I mean, let's not, be nice to anybody. I mean, when you see this kind of situation, and of course people have asked you, as you well know, about, your father's feeling about being involved with, the Philadelphia experiment, the Montauk chair. Am I right about that? As you just said?
Well, there's some weird connection with the Montauk chair, but my dad didn't say that. He was on Long Island, though. But
right. Okay.
It appears that, from some of the strange messages I've gotten from other people and things, that this chair thing, that there's something going on with it, and my dad. It's hard to say.
Okay.
I don't speculate too much on it until I know more. I don't want to speculate more on it.
I understand that, and of course people have asked about it, and I'll just ask you this. Do you ever think you'll ever find out more?
Yeah, I do. I think absolutely. Puhark found that fear stimulates the sender of a telepathic message, which is a very, very interesting idea, and it could have huge ramifications for guys like Bush who are trying to scare everyone all the time. It could really increase the process I'm talking about, this process of the cyplasma sending messages to people and other people sending messages to other people.
Well, don't you think that's taking place with this whole propaganda? This situation that we're seeing today. Really, Andrew, people, I'm only watching, network news. I don't even have cable and stuff. My point is that my outlets are very, few. But what I'm watching, if this is extrapolated across whatever's happening out there on those, myriad channels, Andrew, are we not really seeing, mind-hopping to the max?
Well, absolutely. But it's tricky, though. That's kind of, I don't want to get into the membranes because it's
that's okay.
Okay. Described, but the trickiness enters in when you're trying to use one or the other of the stimuli, because there's two basic stimuli. There's fear and there's relaxation. Fear relates to adrenaline, relaxation to acetylcholine in the body.
Right.
Puhark was studying the balance of these two chemicals. So he would, start this. He would basically start. He would induce fear in the psychic, and then see what would happen. And then he started trying to figure out how the cells were changing in voltage based on the fear, and then trying to amp the voltage. So, and then you start getting into the things of what's happening in the nerves and how they're sending messages, and that's all very interesting stuff.
Uh-huh.
And basically with the nerves, you have a gap there. And the messages are traveling across the gap, just as they do in all the symbolism I'm talking about. There's a gap there, and that's kind of where the cyplasma is, the Garuda is, the entities, they're in that gap, and the voltage is going across. And some membranes will only pass certain signals. They will only pass, say, a fear-based signal or an adrenaline-based signal, and other ones will only pass an acetylcholine-based signal.
Uh-huh.
So it gets complicated, and you kind of get into the reverse of things happening and so forth. But what he found was that shamans and yogis stimulate both at once somehow. They basically get into a trance and they take stimulants. And that allows them to control or to get into contact with the cyplasma in a deeper way.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to explain, but because some of the membranes are inhibitory and some are excite. Some nerves inhibit, some excite. So, people think that tobacco is exciting, excites the nerves, but
the nerve system, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but anyway, when the yogi when the shaman gets all amped up in both areas, they pass out. But then, as they're passed out, as the system starts to recalibrate, it leaves islands in the brain of areas that still have the amped up charge. Okay, so he's amped it up. It's now residing, but the islands are still there, and it's those islands that communicate with the plasma. And I'm not sure how important that is for my research or not, but it's an interesting idea. Do I have any other notes regarding that that'll make it seem clearer? It's just complicated, and I think it's
without a doubt. We've not done this, by the way.
And it's crazy that people would be messing with that process. But here's another thing that I have on here about Puhark that and this is just, think about how, I don't know, maybe it's not that coincidental, but in my picture of the Garuda that my sister took, I really think this is a picture of this phenomenon. And I say this phenomenon instead of the Garuda because this phenomenon can manipulate the cytoplasma, so it doesn't necessarily mean that the Garuda was standing in that kitchen window, but maybe it was a hologram of the Garuda. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Or somehow that picture coalesced on that film. And I think it's real. I'm kind of stunned that there's this photo and no one's even investigating it. The people out there that are making all these documentaries about Mothman, and they never answer any questions. They have some scary music and interview a couple of witnesses. And here I have this photo that I think is of the creature, and no one even cares. I mean, no one people that should care. The regular folks shouldn't care, but these producers and things, it's strange. But I think it's real, and in that picture, there's an upside down 7-Up glass.
Oh, what's a 7-Up glass?
Well, I'm also wearing a shirt, and that picture just came up on my computer screen, on the screensaver. And the West Virginia Tech shirt is kind of a clue. I mean, that's kind of, a lot of this stuff a lot of these Army bioworker guys go to school there. That's one thing. I think there's little symbolisms in this photo. And the 7-Up glass turns out to be, it comes up in Puhark's book on Uri Geller. That I'm trying to remember exactly what happened with the glass, but Geller felt like he got a message from the glass or something.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna have to look it up again and see exactly what he said. But this glass came up in the book.
Okay.
I mean, it was highlighted as an anomalous 7-Up glass. Okay. That's how extremely minutely coincidental this stuff is. So it's big for me. It meant something to me when I read that. Oh, by the way, the guys that were working with Puhark, Tom Slick, occasionally, hiring Puhark's psychics, they were involved in the Patterson film investigation.
The what?
Bigfoot film.
The Ray Patterson situation?
No, the Roger Patterson film of Bigfoot.
Oh.
Bigfoot film.
Okay.
Which has been in the news lately because people say it's fake. Someone came forward to write a book and say it's fake.
Okay.
And I'm saying there's a connection to Puhark to that.
Well, what's your feeling about the film?
It's always looked fake to me.
Okay.
That's all I can say. What do you think?
Well, I can believe the film. My question always was, what's the object? I mean, is Bigfoot real or not? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I can believe the footage and the placement and all that, which might be an aha to you. My question is, who's that object? How does that sit with you?
Who's that? I don't know.
I mean, in other words, I mean, if we're talking about the same...
It's the same guys. It's these CIA guys. Tom Slick was a CIA agent, and yet he was a big cryptozoologist.
But my point was, I mean, when I look at the object in its environment, the whatever I see seems real. I mean, it seems like it's placed rightly, blah, blah, blah. My point is, what am I looking at as far as the particular humanoid is? You know what I mean? In other words, if that humanoid is something other than we are, then we got a situation here, because I think everything else as far as the background, and all that, long before the days of backdropping, in Photoshop. You know what I'm saying, Andrew? I mean, I'm okay. Huh?
I think it's a guy in a suit, but yeah, I think it's possible to take a picture of an entity. But I just don't, I'm not sure that that's an entity.
Exactly. I'm not sure about that, but as far as placement in the real time of whatever the environment was, okay. But what is that? Yes. I mean, we've seen things nowadays, of course, with Bin Laden, where they put all kinds of backdrops behind the guy. And, he may be dead for God knows how many years. And we're not going down that path, but there's a difference between putting something up front with rear screen projection and that particular video, which showed something obviously in the woods with foreground, background, but was that somebody in a monkey suit? Yeah, that's another deal. Did I screw things up?
Well, I'm going to try to, but we got about 5 minutes, I think, so, right?
Whatever you want, bro.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, yeah, we can just, we're getting close. We're getting close to finishing this first page. What was the other, was there anything else on Puharich? Well, written in amongst the Puharich material, I wrote Madeline Bennett uses the force via birds to get what she wants. Did I talk about her? Did I ever talk about her?
No.
One of our witnesses, famous Mothman witness, her sister claims to use the birds as how do you say this? I mean, they're like genies for her. So not only do we have scientists in the lab, saying you can get messages from an object or another being. But this lady, who's kind of just a down-home mountain lady, is using it for her advantage almost, or using it in her daily life.
And so restate that, she's saying that birds are...
She talks to birds, basically, and this is a woman whose sister had probably the closest encounter with Mothman. And so the sister with the birds, had some experiences with UFOs as a kid, seeing balls of fire and telepathing somehow to the balls of fire. But then now as an elderly lady, she says that she gets messages in advance about upcoming occurrences and can just ask for things using a bird as a medium somehow.
Patrick, did you capture this in your documentary?
Yes.
Wow. Well, why don't you talk about that? We've not said anything about the documentary, and people should know that if they wanted to, sit there and scrutinize time and time over again the information you have to impart, it really would be nice if they had whatever material you produced. And that is what, a 5-part DVD?
5 6-hour DVDs, and you can get that in MP3 format if you like.
All right, what does that mean to people? I mean, MP3 usually means audio.
Right. Yeah. We have it all. You can get the video, or you can, because some people don't want to watch on TV.
Right.
Because of time constraints. So if they're in their car, they could just listen to an interview.
All right. So you have 2 different formats. You have a DVD that can be watched at home, and you have an MP3 that they can pop into their CD players and listen as they're going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. We'll make that move. That's really important. So get head on with the information about this, because people are listening to this. A lot of them who probably haven't heard you before, and I'm sure there are others who have, but it's not. This is the time to talk about that because we haven't through this whole discussion, and I don't want to be remiss in being able to let people know, if I want to go beyond what we're talking about here, where can I access this? So by all means, go for it.
Go for.
Let them know what they can get, in what form they can get it, and on what website they can do that.
Okay, AndyColvin.com. We've got 4 or 5 links there to the products, the MP3s, the DVDs, or the soundtrack. And as I've mentioned on prior shows, we've got 3 books coming out, but unfortunately none of them are out yet. One's a photo book.
I know how close you are, though.
It goes on forever. The designers, he has done about half of it on the photo book, so we're definitely getting there. And those will just be Amazon.com books.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
They're being published by Amazon through the Cincinnati Conceptual Art Museum. And so if you just go to Amazon and put my name in here later this year, you'll see at least one of them, probably 2 of them, hopefully all 3 books. And my name's Colvin, Colvin, Andrew Colvin. And what else? One thing I mentioned, I have this image of that I'm talking about, this anomalous image that my sister took, and up there, and also there's another anomalous image that I wanted to mention because Gray Barker had a description in one of his interviews about the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm-hmm.
He did a poem about the Philadelphia experiment, and he talks about this heat mirage that people would see around the sailors, either when they were on the ship during the original experiments or later. They supposedly would blow up, would catch on fire and disappear, and that you would see a heat mirage around them. And this occurred in Charleston in the chemical reserve. 2 guys that were sailors from that base.
Mm-hmm.
Such as my father.
Wow.
And this picture was taken after my father was dead, but it was very close to where we lived. It was in our new house, which is close to the other house. And there's a heat mirage around this person or thing that I took a photo of. I was taking a picture of a crop circle that was in our yard. And this was before we knew what they were, and it wasn't a very good one. It was kind of a crappy one, but I took this photo anyway. And there's this being there, and you can literally see these. You can see the cytoplasma bending. That's the best way to describe it. It's going in a circle around this being. So, I don't think it's. I still don't have it up, but I'm going to get it up. And by the time people hear this, it will be up.
Okay.
Getting back to Holiday for a second, the guy that wrote the Die-Fed Enigma, and he also wrote The Dragon and the Disc, which talks about the connections between the Garuda or dragons and UFOs, and the relationship with the church, and how the king, either the king or the church, sent out the knight to slay the dragon, meaning, so it's symbolic of the destruction of these pagan, the destruction of the knowledge of this ancient process.
Okay, fair enough.
Process.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about, this is really interesting. In Puerto Rico, they did some research on the UFO sightings there, and they found that UFOs are seen 30 kilometers from the center of a geomagnetic anomaly. But they're not seen closer.
Mm-hmm.
Circle the anomaly. So, and that really clicks it in for, I think, it should click it in for us, what's happening there. You've got this field of magnetism, and it's like an atom. And around the edges are swirling the electrons, and that's the UFO. And if you apply that same concept to Charleston, to where we lived, you could place a circle, place Point Pleasant and Charleston on a circle.
And it would be...
You're right. And it's 30 kilometers to the center.
Mm-hmm.
30 kilometers to the other center.
Mm-hmm.
Or to the edge. You know what I mean? Like, or is it 30? Let's see, what did I say? Is it 30 across the diameter? I can't remember. But the point is that when I did that, I found that it created a center point in Charleston and Point Pleasant, which would put it near a town like Liberty, West Virginia, in that area. Turns out that there is a guy who claims that in Liberty that they have been doing, that NASA has been studying a vortex. This guy's name, and you can check this out, I'm not making this up.
I'll do it.
William Dean Ross. And he's kind of a strange bird. He pops on various lists and
blogs and stuff?
Blogs and stuff.
Okay.
But there's a big article called Catch a Falling Star that he wrote that kind of goes into this whole story of how he worked at Institute, which is where they made the fake. It's where the Germans and the Rockefellers are making their synthetic fuel in America. The same synthetic fuel that they were, it was a secret thing, but that wasn't secret actually.
Well, all right, hold on, time out. I got to stop you there.
This is where let me finish. This Institute site is where Tad Jones saw the UFO. It's right next to where I lived, the town next to us, next to Dunbar, where there was 2 or 3 Mothman sightings. And it's this old, it's heavily, the college is heavily influenced by, it would have to be heavily influenced by Standard Oil, because of this history of it being such a critical, link in that chain that they have going worldwide. And he says that NASA and the NSA are using this university, this college for research, and that he was part of the team. He filmed it. He filmed these forays out into the countryside there to this vortex, and that NASA is trying to figure out all of this more than I guess Puhark found out.
Well, wait a minute. Ross wrote this?
Ross wrote this.
Oh.
And he claims he was involved in this experimentation.
And out of what university did
this? Kind of a technical guy, West Virginia State College.
All right, not UWV, West Virginia State.
Yeah, West Virginia State at Institute.
All right, where's that located at? Do you know? We're not talking about Morgantown.
No, it's near Charleston.
It's right there. Okay.
You have Charleston, West Charleston, Mound, which is now called North Charleston.
Okay.
Then you have Dunbar and Institute.
I got a good friend in Charleston. I should really get in touch with him. Huh?
You should.
I mean, this person I've not talked to in a long, long time. Old friends from Vermont. Lawyer down there, but I'm very open. I would not have a problem, and I'm not, by any way, means, or shape, doubting what you had to say. But you're talking about all the stuff that goes around in Charleston, and this individual has a brain and would not lie to me. Okay, so.
And what did he say?
What's that? No, I mean I should really get in touch with him.
Oh.
Because there's a lot of stuff going on, and I would like to get his take on what if anything he's seeing down there. And that doesn't mean that if he doesn't, that you're not, on the money. And believe me, this is not something to discredit or confirm you. But look, you know I have no problem with that. Things go bump in the night in West Virginia, right? So, believe me, I'm not a naysayer whatsoever. I just like to find somebody else who might say, things a little bit weird down here.
Okay.
So,
being as we're at the 2-hour mark, I want to give one more, and then stop it for now. I found out. I read, and it looks like I've written down the sources of Michael Clark. But the idea is that the Rockefellers oversaw the Special Virus Cancer Project.
Where did that take place?
Well, I've got 6178.
But where? I mean, was that in New York or was that in WV?
Well, it was in Maryland. Leonard G. Horowitz, M.D. You've probably heard of him.
Len Horowitz?
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's
written about it before, but, I never paid much attention. I read his articles, but until all this has started to come together, I didn't pay much attention, or I forgot. But I go back and apparently he just posted this on Rents, and I'm not a big Rents fan or anything, but
no, but Len's a pretty straight shooter. I would like to believe.
There's an article on there, Horowitz, on the origin of AIDS being related to this Special Virus Cancer Project, which I talked about earlier as being as Nixon really pumping the money their way in 71, right when my dad got jabbed, and that's the same time that Puharich went to Maryland. Harriet's family moved to Maryland.
Okay.
And but now we have a Rockefeller connection to that. I think Horowitz just comes out and says that the Rockefellers were overseeing that project or were, funding it somehow.
Exactly.
And, so there you go. Another reason why that project, were they to be pulling some shenanigans, they might go to West Virginia because Rockefeller's the governor, and they could easily, cover up any kind of revelations that might come out. If somebody screwed up, they could, cover it up. Sort of like Jeb in Florida.
Agreed. And you've been very fair about this. In the early shows that we did, I thought I might have pushed you about the whole idea of the Rockefeller influence in West Virginia. Not that you didn't know it, or I don't know if you necessarily wanted to talk about it. But, I mean, we talked about the X-Files always referring to West Virginia or having things happen in West Virginia. But, yeah, you're right. I'm glad you're saying that because, yeah, something's going on there. And it is the province of the Rockefellers for over a century. Would you not agree?
Now, did I mention the cattle link to Rockefeller?
You talking about the mutilations?
Yeah.
I think at the outset we talked about it some.
Oh, did we? Okay, I forgot.
Yeah.
Huge cattle ranches. Oh, yeah, I did talk about that. Well, I talked about but I don't know if I mentioned that the cattle. Yeah, we did. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, really. I mean,
my transcriptionist edit this out. This part out.
Well, I think people should know, though, I mean, in fairness to you, that, you're looking at a very big manuscript, of which not everything that you wanted to have happened, and that's what you're dealing with. But, I mean, to go on, I mean, let's face it, Andrew, for 2 hours, I mean, and this is only, like, supposedly the first of the last 3 we're going to do. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there to be had. I mean, we can all deal with, little blips and bumps in the road. But the fact that you would come forward with this information is, like, huge. So, I mean, we can deal with that. I mean, so, if we all have a little brain farts or whatever, hey, that's okay. The main thing is, and I'm going to tell you right now, I mean, people are going to be very, very interested in this, and I'm going to guarantee you that. I'm at my wit's end. I mean, it's been a long day for me, but I'm just so happy you came on and also could spend the time you did because, I mean, I'm tired of just breaking this thing down an hour and an hour and an hour. I just said to myself, hey, it's my show. To hell with it. If people don't want to download it to fit it into their particular broadcast network, that's the way it goes. So, yeah, I had a little change of heart. And, I'm really glad that you came forward like you did and as replete as you did. So,
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a big way of saying thank you and come and get it because this has to be told. That's all there is to it, and not many people will do this kind of thing. And so, man, this is great. Believe it or not, I mean, I'm happy. And I mean, as far as your notes go, as you told me, you figured you had 3 shows left. This would be the first of them. How are we doing as far as you being on track?
Oh, well, we'll see. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff on that second page and not as much on the third page. So, it's possible that we could, maybe get it all done in another 2 hours. And that would be good.
Hey, it's your time. I mean, obviously, I want you to profit by it. But believe me, as long as you want to run, I'll run. And long may you run. So no problem.
For me, it's not necessarily pointing fingers at this person or that person in terms of, who pulled this conspiracy.
Right, right.
But it's the process of becoming comfortable with, encouraging people to become comfortable with this process, with the fact that the cytoplasma is, they're linked to these forces, that there are ways that you can use it without endangering yourself. Put it that way.
All right. Well, I don't know if making people comfortable with it is the exact terminology, because as you're talking,
the process of the being on the path, and I kind of I relate it to Buddhism because to me it's such a practical way of looking at life, and I don't know, it's looking at using it to become, everything's preparation. It's all, life is preparation for the moment when you merge back with the super spectrum. So, the Buddhists, especially if you go read Sogyal Rinpoche, Sogyal, Sogyal, you will, he talks a lot about death and preparing for it, and understanding all of this stuff is important in terms of getting your own frequency right, getting your mind right, as they say. And if more people just looked at the process, look at your programming, take back your own enlightenment, take back your own spirituality, take responsibility for it, and that's what's important. It's not busting somebody. I mean, that probably needs to be done with some of these guys, but that's such a large and abstract process of fighting it. Really, the most practical for most of us is to learn from the symbolisms and take from it what. Basically, it's giving back to yourself is what it is. It's not really taking. It's giving back to yourself.
Well, I won't say anything with regard to that. I'll only say I appreciate the fact that you are illuminating an area of American life that is not really known about for obvious reasons, and that's always a problematic thing. But the fact that you've come out and done that, and also are willing to offer a solution, that's pretty good stuff. And Andrew, like I said, I appreciate the time you spent. I mean, 2 hours. My goodness, it's like flown by. And you thought you had 2 more shows left in you. I'll be sad when I see you go, but I know that you have other things to do too and other projects. So, can I assume that we'll talk in the very near future?
Sure. Yeah.
All righty.
And thank you very much.
Is that a kid or is that a cat?
That's the neighbors.
Kid or cat?
First kid, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, listen, thanks very much, bro. We'll see you soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Good night.
We are traveling crossed that river, our friends have gone, and we are following one by one. Deliver us from the gathering storm, sheltered from the coming harm. Deliver us from the gathering storm, keep us living safe and warm. Events unfold, dreams are sold, hopes on hold, time just rolls, and I'm waiting, yeah, I'm waiting. Help me solve the mystery, becoming who I want to be, creating. Deliver us from the gathering clouds and material things to which we bow. Lift us from this darkening haze and show us an enlightened day. Speak and listen to your voice. Realize the gift of choice. A love that makes the foulest clean and makes the humble poor believe. Not hating, not hating. Falling out of grace are we, sinless, never more to be. We are praying, meditating. We are traveling to our home, one by one, traveling home. We are racing, we are racing. Lift us from this darkening haze, show us an enlightened day. We are gazing, we are gazing.